Assalamu rahmatullah, bismillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're about to conduct an interview with our brother Mustafa George. We have a few questions, inshallah. We apologize for the delay. Thanks for being patient with us. Assalamu rahmatullah, Mustafa. How's everything, brother?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, everything's alright.
Thank you for giving us your time and taking your time out to do this interview with us, brother.
It's my pleasure.
Jazakallah khair. So some people joining, mashallah. So we'll go to the first question. The first question is, where are you from and when did you accept Islam and what motivated you?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Born in the area of Bed-Stuy, but raised in the area of Flatbush. I came into the fold of Islam in around early 90s, around 1993. But although I'm from Brooklyn, I came to the fold of Islam. I accepted Islam while I was in Queens. I would think the thing that motivated me was the da'wah that I received from an individual. One day, while I was in New York City, I was young, I was about 16 years old, and there was an older brother. I was on the train, and there was an older African-American brother. I saw him sitting there. He was wearing a black kufi, and I don't know, for some reason I was compelled to ask him, why is he wearing that on his head? He said he's a Muslim. He was older, by the way. He said he was Muslim, and I asked him, what is Islam? And he said it's the belief in one God. We don't worship Jesus, we don't worship idols, we don't worship individuals, we worship one God, and we basically dedicate our lives to that one God who is Allah. He also explained to me the fact of the strong relationship that a Muslim has with his Lord. For example, the Salah, the fact that we pray 5 times a day. And for me as a Muslim, for me as a Christian, at that time that was something that was very important to me, because I used to, although I was from the streets of New York and I did what teenagers would do at that age, I did have God consciousness. I did feel the need to, why am I here? What's the purpose of life? Is it, the stuff that teenagers do? Is it, parties? Is it girls? Is it music? Is it, fun and games? Or is there a greater purpose to life? And I used to be, I used to go to church every Sunday, and I was somewhat devoted. But the rest of the week, my relationship with God is no relationship whatsoever. So when he explained to me that the Muslims pray 5 times a day, so in the morning they have to, before they even leave the home, they have to turn to God, and they begin their day with a prayer. In the middle of the day, they continue their day with a prayer. Toward the late afternoon, there's a prayer. At the sunset, there's a prayer. At night before going to bed, there's a prayer. That was something that was very attractive to me. Something very attractive to me, because that, and that's not only one day a week, but that's every single day, from the time you enter into the fold of Islam until your death. So that was something very attractive to me, because I felt as a young teenager, I needed something like this in my life, something that brought order to my restrictions, to my life, something that gave me God.
Sorry, what's big?
Right. So, as a Christian, I had a problem understanding the Trinity. And I also had a problem understanding, because like I said, once again, although I was a teenager and I was doing the thing that, Brooklyn boys do, but reading the Bible and the stories of the prophets, Prophet Moses, Prophet, as we say in Arabic, Prophet Musa, the prophets, Prophet Dawood, Prophet Sulaiman, Prophet Noah, reading the Bible about the prophets and their message to the people to worship God and to leave off the evils of the society. So, and if you read the Bible, and the stories of the prophets always informing the people to worship God, all the way up into the time of Jesus. And then the Christians claim that, at that time it changed to the worship of Jesus himself. You know, and so I had a problem with this. Like all of the prophets and messengers were calling to the worship of God and telling the people to leave alone the ills of the society. And then the message changed, according to what they're saying, the message changed when Jesus came, and that is to worship God through him. When this person gave me da'wah about Islam and said, no, Jesus, we believe in Jesus, but we believe in Jesus as a prophet like the other prophets, to worship God alone, and to worship God through the teachings of Jesus, you know. And thereafter, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, Muhammad is the same as his mother Mary. So this is something that was very attractive to me. So you know, so at the age of 16, you know, between 16 and 17, I entered the fold of Islam, and I had no hesitations.
17 years old, that's an age where most teenagers is starting to really feel like they want to explore the world, you know what I mean? Not really go the opposite and settle down, mashallah. So the next question we're going to ask, why did you leave Brooklyn and move to the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia?
Allah Mustaan.
After you accepted Islam at 17?
I accepted Islam between 16 and 17. By the age of 18, I wanted to come to Saudi Arabia. You know, so within 2 years. And the reason why that took place, I was in New Jersey one day. And I was sitting next to a street merchant. As you know, in Jersey, you know, downtown Jersey and in Newark, you have street merchants. I was sitting next to a street merchant, and it was time for, and he was Muslim, and it was time for prayer. And he had a radio.
Here we go. I'm going to show you something after.
Okay.
Here we go. We're back.
All right. So this individual, he was playing Quran in Arabic. I was a new Muslim, and I was standing with him, spending some time with him. And it was time for prayer. It was time for the sunset prayer. So he said, little man, watch my table, and I want to go pray. And the Quran was playing in Arabic on the radio. So an individual came over. I suppose he was non-Muslim. An individual came over and said, what's that on the radio? So I said, it's Quran. So he waited for a verse to finish, and he said, what did he just say? And my response is, I don't know. So he said, exactly, and he walked away. So I said to myself, I was about 18, I said, never will I let that happen again. You know, I should know, as a Muslim, I should know the speech of the Quran. I should know what Allah is saying to his creation. You know, and the Quran, from the beginning of it to the end of it, is in Arabic. You know, and it's read in the prayers, 5 daily prayers. The Quran is read, you know, by the imam who's leading the congregation. So I said to myself, I have to learn the language. You know, I mean, obviously the Quran is translated, or the meaning of the Quran is translated in English, but in terms of the essence of the Quran, in terms of the message, in terms of understanding the language, and in terms of understanding how Allah is speaking to the creation, you get so much more obviously in the Arabic language. That's the language it was revealed in. So I said I have to learn the Arabic language. So at that time, I was working for FedEx in Manhattan, and FedEx has stations all over the world. So I started realizing that there were packages going to Kuwait, packages going to Egypt, packages going to Saudi Arabia. So I found out from the company that they have branches in Saudi Arabia, branches in Egypt. So I just wanted to go to an Arab country so I can learn the Arabic language. I sent emails out to many different stations, and Federal Express in Saudi Arabia, they responded. The next thing you know, I was on the airplane to Saudi Arabia back in 1995, and I've been here ever since.
1995, we've been ever since.
1995, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, the next question, the third one. If you can give just one piece of advice to those interested in Islam, what would it be?
If I had a piece of advice for individuals that are interested in Islam, I would say take some time and learn about it. I would say take some time and learn about the religion. Because indeed, it's an empty life when an individual goes through his life without a purpose. You know, whether he's younger, whether he's older, you know, it's never too late to learn about Islam. You live an empty life. You live a life that you don't feel that you have a relationship with Allah. You don't feel like you have a purpose. You know, the fact that Islam is the message of the prophets and the messengers. And you will find that if you read the Quran, you will find that it's the message of the prophets and the messengers. It mentions all of the prophets that came before Muhammad, Prophet Jesus, Prophet Isa, Prophet Musa, Prophet Dawood, Prophet Sulaiman. All of them are mentioned in the Quran, and the message is the same. It's a unified message to mankind about monotheism. You know, so that's one. Another thing is Islam affects every part of your life. There's nothing in Islam. There's nothing in a person's life except that Islam has legislation for that. If you want to get married, there's legislation for marriage. If you want to do a business transaction, there's legislation for a business transaction. If you want to travel, there's legislation for traveling. If you want to eat, there's legislation. There's a way to eat. You know, so the Prophet Muhammad, you know, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, it's brings structure to our life. There's nothing in the person's life except that Islam has legislated something. And it's still present. The Quran is present. The teachings and statements and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, it's present. So you learn about this, you read about this, you study this, and you act in accordance. You know, so it totally, you know, brings direction to an individual's life. So I advise anyone, you know, don't hesitate. Yani learn, take your time, learn about the religion, ask your questions. Because if indeed Allah has created this creation with a purpose, you know, so for a person to live and die without knowing that purpose and fulfilling that purpose is a waste of life. You know, so I advise individuals to be diligent and try to learn about this religion.
Jazakallah khair. You did a lot of, mashallah, good people, good comments, good dua, mashallah. A few of your students keep saying they're my teachers. Yes.
So I have been to the States, okay? And I have met some non-Muslim friends over there. And some of them say, whenever we discuss Islam, they like it, but they believe, as what they say, in a higher power. But it seems like they have a problem with the word religion. So could you give me an advice about that?
Okay, with regards to the brother's question about individuals believing in a higher power, but not wanting to enter into a religion, there's one response, and that's Allah has created the creation with order. Allah has given perfect order to this creation. You know, in terms of even our bodies, and Allah says that in the Quran, even in yourselves, you know, there's perfect order. And let me give you an example. If we eat, and the food goes down the wrong pipe, you automatically, you know, your body automatically responds to that. So there's absolute order in the creation. You know, there's order in our bodies. There's order. The sun comes up, the moon comes up, the night comes, the day comes. There's absolute order. You know, so Allah, who is the creator, He has given order to the creation, and there should be order in the worship. If everyone says, no, I worship who I want to worship, I worship how I want to worship, then where is the order? Where's the same order that Allah has given to the creation? You know, and another thing, Allah is the one that provides for us. Allah is the one that created us, and He provides for us. An individual breathes the oxygen that's provided by Allah. You know, an individual uses the intellect that's provided by Allah. You know, so the reality is Allah has given you this. What do you give back to Allah? Is it acceptable that an individual breathes the oxygen which is provided by Allah, uses the intellect, everything, Allah gave you this body, and for an individual to say that, no, I won't give Him back anything, I won't worship Him, I have my own views about Him, then where is the justice in this? You know, so it's very important, and an individual should understand that, you know, Allah, once again, Allah created them, Allah provided for them. We were babies. And all of us, we were babies, and had Allah not, you know, decreed that we would have mothers and individuals to protect us and support us, where would we be now? You know, the nature that Allah has given the humans comes out, and it automatically knows that it has to, you know, either breastfeed or it has to be fed, and the compassion that Allah has given the mothers to care for the babies. And if the mother is gone, then others care for the baby. That compassion comes from where? You know, so for individuals to say that, you know, there's no God, or I do what I want, and what gives you this right when Allah gives you everything? So this is something that people have to reflect over.
Jazakallah khair, brother. We'll go to the next question. We'll skip, skip it because somebody asked a few questions here, and a few of them I think is pretty much on the same topic. Like one brother asked, how can you, let me go back to the brother questions, brother Issa. So, we're gonna ask this question. He said, how do you manage work and seeking knowledge from the scholars at the same time?
It's not easy. It's not easy, but where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. When I first came to Saudi Arabia in 1995, 1996, I didn't speak Arabic. I didn't speak Arabic. People said, getting in taxi cabs and at the airport, people asking me my name in Arabic, I did not know how to respond. I did not know how to respond, but staying up at night and having teachers and joining the Islamic University in Medina and spending time there. Now when I hear a person speak Arabic, he's like he's speaking English. Like I understand him as if I understand my own language. And that's very important. That's very important because once again, when you perform your 5 daily prayers, you're reciting Quran. You should understand what you're saying. You should understand what you're saying because you're reciting the book of Allah. But in terms of being able to, you should schedule yourself. If an individual wants to learn, he should schedule himself. If he's in America, if he's in England, he should schedule himself. He should, put aside some time for work, put aside some time for family, and put aside some time for learning the Arabic language and studies.
Okay. The next question, brother, what is Salafism and does it support extremism?
The methodology of the Salaf, it basically refers to the early generations, starting from the Prophet Muhammad and his companions and those who followed them in righteousness. So Salafiyya is individuals ascribing themselves to the early generations. So we don't understand Islam based on our understanding, based on our own opinions. No, we try our best to adhere to the Quran and adhere to the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet, the authentic way of the Prophet, how it was implemented by them. So does that mean we don't drive cars? Does that mean we don't do modern day things? No, it has nothing to do with technology. It's talking about the understanding of the religion. The understanding, how do you understand this religion? When the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, when he said something, what's the understanding of this? Do I take it my own opinion, or do I say, how did his companions, those who were around him, how do they understand this? How do they implement this? That's Salafism. In terms of extremism, no, it's the furthest thing away from extremism. And because of that, you find the different books that are authored and printed by the Salafi scholars, translated by the Salafi students of knowledge. You find that it's totally against extremism. The strongest material in the English language, method, for example, against ISIS, and that clarifies how they're far from the religion, is from the Salafi masajid. Whether those masjids are in England, whether those masjids are in America, and of course, starting first from Saudi Arabia, you find the Salafi scholars. They're very diligent in clarifying that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. And because of that, they
clarify to us actually why these people, because a lot of Muslims nowadays, they get moved by emotions. You know what I mean? When they see things that's happening to the Muslim lands, they say, what about Palestine? What about Burma? How do Muslims react to these type of things when you have people like ISIS and them who misguiding these individuals by pretty much planting false, they take a verse from the Quran but tell them a false interpretation of the meaning, and a lot of people, a lot of the youth get led astray like that. What would you advise?
Indeed, you have the authentic statements of the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, speaking about the latter days and what would take place during the latter days. And in those times, the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he advised his followers. Now, when those individuals don't follow or don't refer back to the advice of the Prophet Muhammad, then you will have those type of deviant ideas, deviant ideologies. Where they, to say that, no, we hate the disbelievers, to say that we will fight the disbelievers, to say that we will this, that. Where does that come from? Does that come from the understanding of the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's referring back to the Salafiyya that we said, understanding, taking your religion from the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and getting the advice of the scholars, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about the importance of the scholars, because they're the ones that explain to us the Quran, they're the ones that explain to us and teach us about the Sunnah. So when individuals don't take their religion from the authentic sources of Islam, they will have that deviation. They will have that deviation. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a perfect example of how we treat the disbelievers. You don't find the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing what ISIS does. You don't find the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam treating the disbelievers how ISIS treats the disbelievers. So indeed their methodology and their actions are against Islam, and it's a hindrance, in the call to Islam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just to think, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was an individual that couldn't read and couldn't write. One man over 1,400 years ago by himself, poor individual. Now look at the Muslims spread throughout the world. Was this done by the actions of ISIS? These types of actions? No, it was not done by those type of actions. It was done by the adherence to the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in terms of his treatment, in terms of his honesty, in terms of his generosity, in terms of his concern. And because of that, if you read the authentic life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have Jews that were present in Medina when he was sent as a prophet. He was sent in Mecca, and then he migrated to Medina. You had Jews that had settled in Medina because they read about him in their books. In the Old Testament, they read about him. When they came to Medina, many of them immediately entered into the fold of Islam, or I should say some of them. They entered into the fold of Islam because of what they saw of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his treatment and his dealings. If that was the way of ISIS and the killing and the slaughtering and the chopping off the heads, that wouldn't be the case. But you don't have that in the authentic life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And because of that, you find the religion is the in terms of the followers of Islam, from one man 1400 years ago, this poor individual, and look at how Islam is spreading.
Yeah, mashallah. Jazakallah khair, brother. Another question: when did you start seeking knowledge, and when will you be done? I started from the day I entered into Islam, but it became serious once again at the age of 17, 18, when I wanted to learn the Arabic language. And how it first started was in New York. There were no Arabic institutes, but there was an Arabic institute in Virginia. So I was working for FedEx. So I would get on the FedEx truck at night on Friday nights in New Jersey. I would get on the FedEx truck, and the truck would take me down to Virginia, and I would attend 2 days of Arabic in Fairfax, Virginia, and then I would take the FedEx truck back up to New York Sunday night so I can be at work on Monday morning. So I did that for a year, alhamdulillah, and then but it wasn't enough. I felt that I needed to be in the Arabic environment. Yes.
So like I said, so maybe in 1995, 1996, I transferred and I came to Saudi Arabia, and I, alhamdulillah, started learning the Arabic language, joined the Islamic University in 1997, spent a few years there, graduated, alhamdulillah, sat with the scholars and learned. And it's a continuous process. And a person cannot, definitely, a person can't say, he's studied for 5 years and that's enough. No, a person continues. So because of that, I still sit with the scholars and try to benefit from them and study with them, and it's until I enter my grave, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, brother. 3 more questions, man.
That's a lot.
Well, 2 more. Let's jump. But the next one is very important, mashallah. It's a good advice. Many of us chase money, power, and position, but aren't happy. Why is that? Then we'll do 1 more after that, inshallah.
If a person doesn't dedicate himself to the very reason why he's created, then he's going to have emptiness in his life. If a person has no direction, if a person doesn't connect to his creator, then he's going to have that emptiness in his life. And money does not make an individual happy. Status does not make an individual happy. Fame does not make an individual happy. When you connect to Allah and you begin to implement the life that He expects you to implement, doesn't mean you have to leave alone nice cars and nice house. No, those things are, wonderful. But if you have those things, whether it's nice car, whether it's money, whether it's fame, but you don't have Allah in your life, and you, not only Allah, because some people said, no, I have God in my life, but are you living the life that He wants you to live? Are you worshiping Him how he expects and has ordered that you worship him, if that's missing from your life, then you won't have happiness, no matter what you do. And the opposite, if that's in your life, if a person believes in Allah and worships Allah, but he doesn't have fame, happiness, he doesn't have fame, doesn't have money, doesn't have riches, he will have happiness. He will have happiness because he has a relationship with his Creator. Another thing is that an individual has the realization that this life is not the everlasting life. This life is a test. So this life is going to come to an end. So what preparations has an individual done for the next life? So this is very important. When an individual doesn't have money, he doesn't have fame, he doesn't have riches, but he's prepared for the next life and he has a relationship with his Lord. He's living the very... So he's implementing in his life the very purpose of creation. So there's no doubt that that individual is going to have happiness because he knows while he's alive, he knows what's expected from him, and he knows what's to come. But when that's missing, of course, a person's going to have agony and sadness in his life.
Jazakallah khair, brother. The last question. Many of us know Islam is the truth, but we don't want to give up our bad habits, whether it's drugs, women, or other vices. What advice can you give us?
This creation that Allah has given us and everything that He has given us in it, it's the strongest proof. It's one of the proofs that Allah can give us that which is better. And Allah has placed us on different levels in this life. You have that which is very high, you have that which is very low. If we worship Allah, turn to Allah, submit to Allah, indeed Allah will give us that which is much better in the next life. So if an individual feels, I can't leave off drugs, I can't leave off alcohol, I can't leave off the parties, I can't leave off, you have to realize that this life is going to end. And you're going to be held accountable for that which you do. So you are the author of your happiness or your sadness. As one of the scholars of Islam said, he said, please your Lord before you meet him and decorate your grave before you enter it. And decorate your grave before you enter it. So the individual should understand that Allah will give him that which is much better. And the Prophet Muhammad said that. Whoever leaves something for Allah, Allah gives him that which is better. So we have to have confidence in that. We have to have certainty. And look at that which Allah has given us in this creation. We know that there are places that are absolutely beautiful. Places that are absolutely wonderful. The ocean, the mountain, the stars, everything's wonderful. And Allah is the creator of that. So submit to Allah and see what Allah gives you. And Allah has informed you what He will give you. In the Quran, Allah mentions about the paradise. He mentions about the bliss of the paradise. He mentions about the rivers. He mentions about the palaces. So why would a person, why would an individual, compromise this life, that which is ending, that which, why would an individual compromise this life and, forsake that which Allah has prepared for the righteous?
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, brother. Allah reward you. I think we ended with that. Allah reward you, brother. If you want to say any last advice or anything, I want to shut it, close it.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to have this brief interview.
Thank you, brother.
And all praise to Allah that I'm a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So we're ending with that. Thank you all for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.